Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack the stories behind the numbers, giving you the context you need. Today, we are definitely diving deep into XRP. Its price has seen a, pretty remarkable surge recently. So our mission really is to understand the mix of legal stuff and market dynamics driving this. What pushed XRP up so much and maybe more critically, what that's telling us about where it might go next.
Absolutely. It's so important to get past just the headlines, isn't it? To really dig into the mechanics of why things happen.
Yeah.
And this deep dive, it's all about giving you that central background, the insights from what we've gathered on these recent SEC and Ripple developments and what it means, for crypto overall.
Okay, so the big catalyst, the main event, has to be the news about the SEC and Ripple withdrawing their appeals, right? That seemed to hit the market almost instantly. We saw XRP jump right up to, what was it, $3.20 on August 7th.
That's the one. And it's fascinating because, this step effectively closes the book on a legal fight that's been dragging on since December 2020. That was when the SEC initially came out and accused Ripple of essentially an unregistered securities offering selling $1.3 billion worth of XRP. So resolving this, getting rid of that major regulatory question mark, it just directly pumped up investor confidence. You could almost feel it. It's not just Ripple breathing easier, it sends a clearer signal to the whole digital asset space.
Okay, so appeals withdrawn. But what about the original ruling from Judge Torres? Does this withdrawal kind of cement that ruling as the precedent now? That feels like the really crucial part long term.
Exactly, you nailed it. It all comes back to that July 2023 ruling. Judge Analisa Torres, she drew a really careful line in the sand. She found that programmatic sales of XRP, think automated buys on exchanges, those didn't count as securities. But she also ruled that the direct institutional sales did break securities laws. And that led to the $125 million fine for Ripple. Just to make that super clear for you, programmatic is like the everyday retail buys, blind bids on an exchange. Judge says, okay, not securities. Institutional sales, though. Those direct negotiated deals with big players. Those were deemed securities offerings. And that distinction, honestly, it's huge, a landmark. It sort of gives a possible playbook for how other cryptos might be viewed, especially ones sold both retail and institutionally. It's not just a simple yes-no, which is a big deal for the whole industry, way beyond XRP. And just for context, the price was already sitting around $2.98 before this latest news pushed it over $3.20.
Right, so legal cloud lifting was obviously massive, but surely there were other things feeding into this price explosion. What else were the sources pointing to?
Yeah, definitely. When we dug in, four main drivers really stood out. First, obviously, is that regulatory clarity we just talked about. Getting that case resolved just lowers the barrier significantly for banks, for institutions to get involved, makes exchanges feel safer listing XRP. And it could potentially pave the way for spot XRT ETFs. Our analysis suggests there's a pretty decent chance of that happening in 2025. And an ETF, that could open the floodgates for serious institutional money.
And you can't ignore the buzz, right? This sort of crowd psychology.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Factor number two is market sentiment. This wasn't just good news. For a lot of long-term XRP holders, it felt like vindication. We saw social media just light up, people talking about $10 XRP, maybe even more. Now, okay, that's highly speculative. But it shows you there's this passionate retail base, and their belief can really add fuel to the fire, pushing things beyond just the pure fundamentals.
Okay, hang on. Those $10 predictions, that sounds ambitious. Is there any kind of realistic scenario where that happens, or is it mostly just hype getting amplified online?
Well, it's a bit of both, really. The social media stuff is definitely optimistic, maybe overly so, but it taps into real excitement. To actually get to those kinds of numbers, you need everything to go right. Sustained institutional buying, a good macro environment, and continued real-world use.
Yeah.
Which brings us neatly to the third point, institutional adoption. Ripple's been smart, building partnerships. Like you've got the XRP ledger being used by some Japanese banks for sending money across borders, and BNY Mellon, a huge traditional player, is now doing custody for RLUSD, that's Ripple's stablecoin. That's a big signal, showing traditional finance getting comfortable holding these assets for clients. And with clearer regulations, you can expect more of these deals, which naturally boost demand for XRP itself.
Okay, so strong partnerships, positive vibes. What about the charts? Did the technical picture support the move?
It did. That's our fourth factor. Technical indicators. XRP managed to get above and stay above both its 50-day and 200-day exponential moving averages, the EMAs. For anyone watching charts, that's usually seen as a bullish sign. The short-term trend is stronger than the long-term trend. If it holds above $3.20 consistently, the next logical targets are that recent high near $3.40, and then potentially the all-time high around $3.55.
Wow, okay. That lays it out pretty clearly. So putting it all together, what's the outlook for XRP's price now? Where could it realistically go considering those very different potential outcomes?
Right. So looking at the projections, we see a few possibilities. Short term, say the next few weeks. With this momentum, yeah, it could test $3.40, maybe even push towards that $3.55 all-time high. If we get positive news, like an ETF approval, or if this bullish feeling just keeps going, maybe we see $3.50 to $5 by the end of 2025. Then, medium term, like 3 to 6 months out. If things really line up, ETFs approved, more big adoption news, then maybe those $5 to $10 targets aren't completely out of reach. But, and this is a big but, those higher numbers are definitely speculative. They depend heavily on big money flowing in and the overall economy staying positive. Then there's the conservative view. If the wider market hits turbulence, maybe the Fed tightens things up, or crypto generally takes a hit, XRP could settle back into a range, say, between $2.50 and $3.50. Keep an eye on support around $2.73 and $2.50 in that case.
That's quite a spread. It really highlights how much is still in play, which brings up a good point. What about the bigger picture? What external stuff, outside crypto even, could still throw a wrench in the works for XRP?
Great question. Yeah, XRP doesn't exist in a vacuum. Its price is definitely sensitive to the wider economic mood. Things like, what the Federal Reserve does with interest rates. That impacts all assets perceived as risky. Global trade tensions are another one. If major economies start getting into disputes imposing tariffs like we saw a few years back, that creates uncertainty everywhere. And of course, what Bitcoin does matters. Bitcoin is still the big dog, and its performance tends to pull the rest of the crypto market along, including XRP. So basically, easier money policies or a Bitcoin bull run. Good for XRP. More fear and risk aversion in the markets, that could cap the gains.
So when you talk about these projections, how much weight should we give them, knowing all these outside factors could interfere?
It's about balance. The projections themselves, they're built on market data, trading patterns, standard technical analysis tools like those EMAs and support levels. Pretty standard stuff for analysts. The social media chatter, we treat that more as a sentiment gauge. It tells you how excited or maybe fearful the retail crowd is feeling, which can amplify moves, but it's not hard data for predicting price itself. So the technical levels, the EMAs, those come from established methods. The projections try to factor that in, but yeah, external shocks are always the wild card.
Makes sense. Now, no deep dive is complete without looking at the potential downsides. Even with this positive momentum, what are the main risks or challenges XRP still faces that you think people should keep in mind?
Definitely need to be aware of the risks. Number one is just plain old market volatility. Crypto can swing wildly, sharp corrections happen, and XRP isn't immune. Number two, that ETF approval we talked about. It's a potential catalyst, but if it gets delayed significantly, or worse, rejected, that could really kill the mood and stop the rally. Third, those macroeconomic factors again. A sudden shift in interest rate policy, or maybe a flare-up in trade wars, could easily send risk assets like XRP lower. And finally, don't forget, competition. XRP has rivals. Ethereum, Solana, others are constantly innovating. If they capture more market share or offer better solutions, it could limit XRP's growth ceiling.
Okay, so let's try and tie this all together for you. The big takeaway seems pretty clear. The SEC and Ripple stepping back from their appeals has lifted a huge regulatory shadow off XRP. That's unlocked significant potential. We've seen how regulatory clarity, strong sentiment, real institutional interest, and supportive technicals are all playing a part, leading to projections that, while varied, show considerable upside, maybe even reaching those higher single digits in the best-case scenarios.
Exactly. There's definitely a strong bull case to be made, driven by powerful catalysts. But it's crucial for anyone involved to weigh that potential against those external risks, the economy, competition, regulatory shifts still being possible. Our advice: keep a close eye on the broader crypto market trends and any breaking news on the regulatory front. Stay informed.
And maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Think about that specific legal line Judge Torres drew: programmatic sales versus institutional sales. How might that distinction start influencing regulators looking at other digital assets? What ripple effects could that have across the entire crypto landscape, far beyond just XRP? It's a fascinating question with potentially huge implications for the future.